Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you all for joining us. This is our second virtual town hall that we've done in the past, I believe, 6 months. After our first one, we got a lot of, positive feedback. People really enjoyed it, getting a little bit of a sneak peek and a behind the scenes look at some of the activity that's going on here in the Agudas Yisrael, specifically in the New Jersey office. Just some housekeeping rules. I don't like the word rules, but some housekeeping advice. Obviously, this hopefully will be a little bit interactive. We ask everyone to please leave any questions you have on any topics. Please leave it in the Q&A section, not in the chat, but please leave it in the Q&A. Hopefully, towards the end of the program, we'll have some time, depending on the questions that come in, to open it up for live questions. If need be, if you have a question and you want to be called on at the end, please click the raise hand button, and hopefully we will get to you. Before we kick off, I want to again thank everyone for joining us. Not always easy, 9 o'clock at night. We're busy. We have other obligations, but Baruch Hashem, a sizable amount of people have, decided to join us tonight, and it really means a lot to us. I'm going to ask our co-chairman of the New Jersey board, Reverend Fall Zucker, to open up with some opening remarks, and then we'll head back to my screen and we will continue. Reverend Fall, the floor is yours. He's on his way. Okay, we see that he's logging in, and he's on his way in, and he'll be with us in just 20 seconds. Thank you all for your patience. Again, all questions, please, in the Q&A box. If you want to be called on towards the end, please just hit the raise hand button, and we hopefully will be able to, call on you and hear your questions live. And we will be hearing from our coachman, Mr. Zucker, in just another few seconds as he's getting in. Okay. We'll give it just another 15, 20 seconds. And then maybe we'll just move on. Maybe he's having some technical issues. Okay, thank you for your patience. Okay, it seems like Mr. Zucker is not able to be here. I guess they have bad internet wherever he is.
What attendants prepare doors for arrival, cross check nearby for the call. We are only defining rows 1 through 5.
Okay, I'm going to ask everyone to please mute themselves, whoever that is. And let's move along. Okay. Oh, I see we're able to maybe get into Ralph. We'll give it another 10 seconds. If not, I think we should just go back to the regular program and we'll continue. Okay. So we'll find out. Hopefully Ralph is okay, and we'll move along. Yosef, can you just find out if Ralph is okay? And everything's okay with him. Let's move along. So first of all, welcome everybody. Thank you for participating. This is a great opportunity for us in the Aguda to be able to give over to our members, people that are close with us, the things that we are working on, the things that are important as we go through the season, the session, as they call it, and be able to get your feedback and your thoughts and your questions and your advice as we move along. A lot of times, Agudas Yisrael and other organizations, you see a press release, you see an advertisement, an ad in the paper. We got X amount of millions of dollars for X amount of yeshivas, or we were able to pull off this piece of legislation or that piece of legislation. And really all you're seeing is the end result. Many of these things, many of these items takes months and months, sometimes years to accomplish what you're seeing in one piece of paper. The best example is the budget. At the end of this year, let's go to last year. At the end of last year, we were very excited to announce we had an increase in security funding, an increase in this funding or that funding. But the reality is that that work that went into getting that increase started months before we were able to advertise it or even knew that it happened, because it's a months-long process. That's how the system works. So right now, today is January 27th. The season, so to speak, officially began a couple of weeks ago, a few weeks ago, and we are in the middle of it. Today, I was in a conference call, a Zoom conference call with the treasurer. I have another call tomorrow with the treasurer. We're going to be working a lot with the Treasury Department over the next few weeks. Sometime mid-February, the governor is going to announce his proposed budget. Now, we know that the way how the system works is there's a three-step process. The governor first introduces his proposed budget, then the legislature takes his proposed budget, and they go through it piece by piece, they rip it apart, and they leave a lot of things in, they take a lot of stuff out, and then the legislature crafts its own budget. That budget is then sent back to the governor, where the governor could sign it, could veto the entire budget, or could line item veto specific lines in the budget. And there's a lot of negotiations that go on from now till the end of June, which is a good, several months of a process, till the final budget is completed, and then we see the success or not the success, whatever Hashem has in mind for us. So this is the beginning of the season. We're going into this season knowing a few things. The most important thing that we have to keep in mind for anyone that's involved in advocacy, anyone involved in government, the state of New Jersey has been hit hard due to COVID. Of course, from a health perspective, but also from a financial perspective. The treasurer told us today that as of right now, there's a $4 billion deficit in the budget. So when there's a $4 billion deficit, you need to find places where to fill in the holes of that $4 billion. So there's several options. They could either cut funding on several programs, find new avenues of revenue, which may be taxes or other ideas, to bridge the gap, to fill the hole. There's also a concept of borrowing some money, bonds, which also may be an idea. But as of right now, we're going into this budget with a $4 billion deficit. If we have that outlook as we approach the season, so we have to be realistic to expect that in a year that there's a $4 billion budget, that we're going to be able to increase the non-public school funds by a huge amount of money is not really being realistic. What our hope is, number one, is that everything should be flat, nothing should be lost. And then the second part is be able to get an increase of whatever we can. But with this in mind, there's a $4 billion budget. I go through a few items that we're working on that are the top of our list as of right now in the budget area. And then at the end, after I go through the budget items, I'm going to talk about two other pieces of legislation that we'll be working on that are not budget-related items. And then we'll talk a little bit about the vaccines, which obviously is a very, very big deal to many of us. So, okay, I see Ralph is there, but okay.
Hi, Avi.
Hi, what's doing?
Good. I'm sorry I was in a bad spot. So if you want, I could. You could just keep going. You're doing a great job.
We're about to start on the budget. But,
yeah, I was listening to you. I was listening to you. Just
came in at a perfect time. We're about to start going through the budget items, but I will take a pause and reintroduce our coach in the fall circuit. Thank you for joining us. I know you're not in the best location, but it wasn't easy for you to be here, so thank you very, very much. And you have the floor.
Okay. Well, I just literally 2 seconds. Want to thank you, Rabbi Schnall. You know, it's been a really tough year for all of us, and the pandemic has you know, wreaked havoc in our communities, as it has everywhere. And you know, where we mourn those lost. We have many families struggling, many people struggling, many businesses struggling. And one thing that things like this cause is a gap in the achdus of Klal Yisrael. Agudas Yisrael is all about bringing Klal Yisrael together under the guidance of Gedolei Yisrael. What Agudah is unique in, it has no agenda. It has no real. It's all about helping Rebbe Yisrael and Klal Yisrael. That's what it's been from the beginning, and we're proud of Agudas Yisrael of New Jersey. And one of my proudest moments involved in Agudas Yisrael of New Jersey has been, and probably will always be, bringing you, Rabbi Avi Schnall, into the fold with your incredible energy and your ability to work for Rebbe Yisrael and Klal Yisrael, to really, really be there for each and every person with passion, commitment, dedication. Really unique and a special person. Through this pandemic, you've been involved with the governor's office. Rabbi Schnall has been day in, day out, literally almost daily communications with the governor's office, and helping those of us in New Jersey avoid many of the pitfalls that other states went through with Moisdis, with yeshivas, with chadarim, and with schools and even with weddings and things like that. Having a very an amazing cooperative environment with the governor's office, and that comes because the governor, as I know personally, has real trust and faith in Avi and the people that stand behind him, and it's because of the integrity and because of the commitment of Rabbi Schnall. So that means bringing together in the past year millions of dollars, over $6 million in special ed, $175 per student, the highest I believe in the nation in funding for security in our schools. That doesn't happen by itself. So let's sit back. My proudest moment has been bringing you in to that Agudah. We're grateful for all that you do, and why don't we sit back and listen to all that you have to say.
Thank you very, very much. I'm happy you're able to come on. And Baruch Hashem, whoever's, I'm also going to ask everyone to please mute themselves. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us in this important webinar. And for everything that you do for the Agudas Yisrael and for Klal Yisrael, and we are able to do what we do because of your support and people like you. So thank you, and to all the members of the board of New Jersey, and of course the National Board and the Executive Committee, and all of those members as well. So now, back to the budget. Here we stand, $4 billion deficit. This past year, we were able to increase special ed funding, which we call compensatory education, camp ed, auxiliary services, lots of different ways how to give it, what title we want to give to it. The bottom line is we were able to obtain a $6 million increase. And I want to give a big shout out, of course, to Assemblyman Gary Sher from SAIC, who was instrumental in really getting those funds to become a reality. This was the first time in about 10 years that the special ed funding, that this category of funding increased. What was very ironic and problematic, really, over the past 5-6 years is, I'll give you an example. You have a piece of pie, you have a pie. So you have 10 children that want a piece of pie, you cut 10 slices. If the next year there are 15 people that want a piece of the pie, but the pie doesn't get bigger, what happens is everyone's slice gets smaller. If the next year you have 20 people, now everyone's slice from 2 years ago, that was 1/10, is now 1/20th of the pie. The pie stays the same, the slices get smaller and smaller. That's what was happening to this special ed funding here in New Jersey. We have a program, it's called 192, which is for compensatory auxiliary services to children in mainstream yeshivas. It is the only funding that we get in New Jersey that goes directly for educational services for our yeshivas. It's the only one. The allocation was a $31 million allocation. That allocation of $31 million has remained the same for the past almost a decade, while the amount of children that were eligible for those services grew from 36,000 children to 44,000 children. So now you have 8,000 additional children receiving services, but the size of the pie never grew. The slices kept on getting smaller and smaller. As of today, we are 21% underfunded from what we're supposed to be at of per pupil amount, and the appropriation never increased. Last year, we were able to get a decent size increase of approximately $6 million. That $6 million was a great windfall for us. However, here's what really happened. The per child amount did not increase with that $6 million. What that $6 million did was it prevented the per child amount to go even lower. If that per child amount goes any lower, then the vendors that provide the service are about to tell us they can't afford to provide services with such a low per pupil amount, and the entire program is going to implode. So, for example, if right now today they get about $850 a child, $800 a child, for a vendor to be able to afford to provide services, it can't go lower than, let's say, $700. So if we would not have obtained those $6 million, we would have gotten very close to that $700 threshold. So yeah, the $700 coming in, but $700 a child is not enough to pay teachers and supervisors administrative costs, which means the entire program will implode, if not for the increase, in just a few more years. So yes, the 6 million saved us, but it didn't increase the amount. Next year, there'll be more children. The following year, there'll be more children. So what we are working on as a top priority is to ensure that this piece, that this pie continuously grows in correlation with the amount of children that are growing as well. We can't afford to do this every 5-10 years, get to rock bottom and then get a little Band-Aid, get to rock bottom with a little Band-Aid. We need to really look at this program, which again is the only educational program that we have, and figure out a way that through the budget that the pie increases consistently. So this year again, yes, we got 6 million to cover a loss for last year. Excuse me. We need to come back and make sure that that 6 million is back in the budget again. And not only is that 6 million back, but we need to get an increase. We're looking to get at least another $6 million increase to at least cover the growth, because that's what we've been seeing constantly. Another top item we're going to be working on is technology funds. It comes to our yeshivas. It's really not a big ask, but here's what happened in this past budget. It's an interesting thing. As we all know, there was the CARES Act. In the first CARES Act, a big windfall came to governors, to states, to Board of Eds for education. A lot of money went to yeshivas. Here in New Jersey, the governor used a big chunk of the money that was allocated to governors for technology, and he included in that amount technology for non-public schools. So what he did was he used federal money to cover the regular technology grant that yeshivas receive. What he did then was he took out the technology line item in the budget. So when the governor is now writing a new budget, we need to ensure that that technology line is reinserted into the governor's budget. Because this past year he took it out because we had federal funds. This coming year, there are no federal funds as far as we know right now. So we need to ensure that that technology grant is put back in that budget, because that's all we get for technology funds. That's a top item. Another very important item, and this is, I'm going to say this, I'm going to apologize to all of our friends and members from SAIC and other communities, that transportation is, as of right now, non-existent. Yes, we should one day hopefully figure out a way to get transportation for all non-public school children, for all students, wherever you live. But as it is today, the bulk of transportation is really is a big Lakewood issue. Many of us are familiar with the the legislation that we were very instrumental in getting passed several years ago, that today is known in Lakewood as the LSTA, in which we privatized education. It's a long piece of legislation. I'm not going to bore everyone with all the details, but here's something that most people do not know. That legislation that we passed, not that we passed, but that we advocated to get passed 5 years ago, was a 3-year pilot program, which means it expired 2 years ago. The past 2 years, the way how we were able to fund transportation in Lakewood was at the mercy of Governor Murphy, which he did the past 2 years. We had to go to him hand in hand and say, please give Lakewood a bailout and cover the non-public school funds. 1 year is $8 million. This past year is $13 million. This coming year, again, we may have to just go hand in hand and beg for money again. In order to prevent this from happening every single year, to beg for more money, what we've done is we've created a new piece of legislation that will make the LSTA, number one, a statewide operation, that the same way how we've privatized busing in Lakewood, we could privatize busing in Teaneck, in Livingston, Paramus, in Deal, in Edison Highland Park, in different areas. It's not just a Lakewood piece of legislation, it will be statewide, plus it will be permanent. It will not just be a 3-year pilot program. This legislation has already been introduced in the Assembly. The primary sponsor of this piece of legislation is the Assembly Majority Leader, Lou Greenwald. We already have senators in the Senate that have expressed lots of interest in being the primary sponsor of this bill in the Senate. And as the months ahead of us come, we're going to be working on this piece of legislation very rigorously, because this is crucial. Obviously, all the people from Lakewood that are watching this know how important busing is and recognize that it's a year-to-year thing, that every year, Baruch Hashem, a lot of ishtadlus, a lot of begging, a lot of pleading, that we get funded year to year. Credits to Governor Murphy for doing that. A huge credit to Governor Murphy for funding this 2 years after the legislation expired. But as the governor has told us, this can't be a yearly thing. We have to make it permanent. That's going to be a top item for us as well. Another thing we're going to be very busy with is the federal government. As many of us are aware, there was a second round of the CARES Act that had different names. We'll just call it the stimulus package or the CARES Act, because that's what we're familiar with. In that package, there was $2.75 billion set aside for non-public schools. Of that $2.75 billion, New Jersey is getting approximately $68 million just for non-public schools. Of that $68 million, yeshivas, day schools, are a little bit more than a third of the entire non-public school population. So from that 68, just about $23 million is going to be going to yeshivas and day schools in New Jersey. Quite a sizable amount of money. However, this is what's going to be very tricky, which we're going to be working very hard on for the next few weeks and possibly the next few months. This is the only program, it never existed, a program like this ever, where the state is the one that administers the funds to the schools. Every other program, all the title programs, lunch programs, technology, security, everything we get. If it's a federal program, it's federal to the state, to the local board of ed. If it's a state program, it's the state, local board of ed. The local board of ed is the one that distributes the money to the schools. This funding is different. It's the state that is the one that's going to be distributing it to the schools, which on one hand, some people are happy about. If, let's say, I have a yeshiva that's in a particular district, not the district that I live in, but a different district, where there's a non-public school that's in a district where they don't have a great relationship with the Board of Ed, they're happy that the state's going to be running this program. However, here's the challenge. The state never did this before. There's no one in the State Department of Education that just sits there doing nothing all day long that can handle the influx of requests, applications, all of the logistics of this $68 million amount of money going to 700 or 800 private schools in the state. It's a huge job. So we're very concerned how that money is actually going to be distributed down to the individual schools. We had a meeting earlier this week with the broader non-public school representatives to prepare different ideas and strategies, how we feel may be the right way to do this. And we're presenting this to the Department of Education. I know my colleagues in other states are doing the same thing as well, and saying these are ideas that we thought of that may be helpful. Let's work together as a team, the non-public school community representatives, together with the Department of Education, to allow those funds to get to their intended receiver, which is the non-public schools. There's something which is, it's a tremendous opportunity for yeshivas, $22 million. It's a lot of money. It can be used for services, tutoring, substitutes, after-school programs, summer programs. It can be used to reimburse schools that laid out money to buy tablets. It can be used for technology. It can be used, of course, for health reasons, for health purposes, for cleansing materials, a long list of things it can be used for. We actually gave a webinar for all the schools on the different allowable uses that this money has. It's a great opportunity, but we need to be on top of it to ensure that the money actually gets to where it's supposed to be. The last legislative item, and then I'm going to get to the vaccines, is a very creative idea that actually was brought up by our colleagues in New York. It's something that I believe they're going to be working over there, and we're going to be copying it a little bit over here from New Jersey, or maybe vice versa. We'll see who gets it done first. And that is that we know as Klal Yisrael grows, our challenges grow. In New Jersey, we are way too familiar with what we're dealing with, what we were dealing with in the early days of when from Yidden start to move into neighboring towns such as Jackson or Tom's River, Berkshire, and many of these neighborhoods. Years later, those relationships have been fixed. I don't want to use the word fixed, that's a bad word, but have been made better. And lots of those animosity or sort of the unknown that existed several years ago, Baruch Hashem, in some communities have gone away. In some communities, it's still there. In some communities in New Jersey where many Frum people live, they simply cannot build a shul. They simply cannot build a yeshiva. They don't have a yeshiva in their neighborhood where their children can go to. Some neighborhoods don't have an Eruv. We're very familiar with what happened in Mawa, Upper Saddle River, where they banned an Eruv. We are familiar with what happened in Clifton, New Jersey, for many years, banning the shul. We're familiar with what's going on in Jackson today. We're in the middle of a lawsuit against them. Today, it's practically impossible to have a legal shul in many neighborhoods in Jackson. Not every neighborhood, many neighborhoods where hundreds of families live. In all of these cases, there's a federal law called ALUPA, Religious Land Use and Persons Act. And that ALUPA law has been what sort of protects and prevents towns from enacting laws that would prevent shuls or houses of worship from being built. It's been suggested to us from top lawyers in this field and from others that have been active in this, that what really would be best, especially in a state like New York, New Jersey, where every year we hear of new communities being built, new cities that are having communities, whether it's Linden, Union, Jersey City, Clifton, Manchester, so many places. We should create a state level ALUPA law. And we should look at the federal ALUPA law and see what there wasn't beneficial for us, what was challenging for us, and fix that on a state level. And that would give us a tremendous flexibility to be able to defend these communities and prevent these towns from trying to keep us out if we're able to craft our own individualized state ALUPA law. And that is something that we've already created a draft for New York. We've taken that draft and we've brought it a little bit here to New Jersey. We're bouncing around with a few different attorneys. We're looking at different legislators that may be the right ones to be the sponsors, but these are things that we're working on. The last item, and then we'll open up for some questions. We got a few questions that came in, is vaccines. I wish I could tell you that vaccines, that the story is great and it's amazing and everyone's going to get vaccinated tomorrow night. Unfortunately, that's not the reality. Today, there was a call with the governor's office and community leaders from throughout the state discussing the vaccine rollout. Here's the bottom line. There is not a lot of vaccines in New Jersey, and it's coming in and it's trickling in. And the state, as soon as they get a vaccine, they're giving it out. In New Jersey, there were no threats to any hospital or any urgent care place that if you give out a vaccine to the wrong person, you're going to get $1 million fines. That was not the approach in New Jersey. On the contrary, the commissioner herself said, if you have vaccines that are going to expire, give them to people. Don't throw out any vaccines. That's a big problem. So the approach of the governor and his administration has been from the beginning of the vaccine rollout. Give out the vaccines. Don't hold it. Make it simple. Make it easy. On January 12th, the state expanded the eligibility for those that are eligible to get the vaccines. Anyone above the age of 65, people under the age of 65. A lot of people are eligible. A lot of people are eligible. It's worthwhile to go on the state website and check it out to see all the different options that are there for those that are eligible. And you may be surprised, you may fit into one of those categories. The problem is there are not enough vaccines. That's the reality. Today, it was announced that the state anticipates getting 100,000 vaccines each week for the next few weeks. Is that a lot? It's not enough, but that's the projection. They're hoping, the state is hoping that over the next few weeks, that number will be able to increase. But as of now, that's where we're up to. So there's about 8 million residents in the state of New Jersey, 100,000 vaccines coming in a day. You can do the math. It will take a while for everyone that wants to get vaccinated to get vaccinated. We've given out other public service announcements. The minute we found out that there's a registration link, we told people, go online, go register. Maybe we'll put into the chat box. I'll ask my always reliable assistant, Rabbi Hertz, to maybe put into the chat box the link before this is over into the chat box so people can see it, of where people can register for the vaccine on a state level. Some urgent care places have their own registration, depending on the city or county you live in. Some counties have their own registration. You want to make sure you're registered. That's the advice I can give regarding the vaccines. This is my report for right now, and I will go to the questions. Again, if you want to be called on, just raise your hand. And Yosef, if anyone's raising their hand, please let me know. And I'll get to some of the questions as follows. Okay, summer 2021. That's a great question. I'll read the question as it came in from a camp owner, obviously, a good friend of mine. Where does the state stand at this point in summer 2021? The answer is no one is thinking about summer 2021 except for camp owners. I believe we're going to be open. I can't promise you that, but I believe as everything looks like today, and the projection of how the vaccines are rolling out and what the expected number and percentage of people being vaccinated by the time the summer comes, I have all the reason to believe that summer camps will be open in New Jersey. You asked about New York, sleepaway camps. I can't talk a lot about New York. Obviously, I'm not so familiar with New York. It's a different administration. They have a different approach to different things. But again, I assume most probably camps will be open. I'm not too worried about it. There may be regulations like we had last year, which in some cases were difficult, some cases not as difficult, but those regulations are definitely way too early now to be made for what's going to happen in 6-7 months from now. But I believe it's going to be open. So definitely don't shut down Camp Yachad. Keep it open. It's a great camp. We love it. And that's a shout out for you. And we imagine that the camps are going to be open. Okay, let's go to the next one. The other one was that New York's having a hard time with special ed funding. I encourage everyone that has questions about New York to please call up our New York office. Special ed is Mrs. Leah Steinberg, who was a legend in special ed courses, Project Learn, 212-797-9000, and they'll be able to give you whatever updates they have regarding New York special education. Okay, let me go to the the next one. There is a bill number 5147, which has passed the legislature. The governor, I believe, did not sign it yet, and it does establish fund to provide grants for expanding summer learning programs. Could this help camps, and could camps tap into these grants? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. Obviously, we have to be creative, and it has to be compliant, obviously. But the answer is yes. There will be grants. And I'll give you before this bill, even on the federal funds, those $22 million that are going to schools, a lot of those funds could be used for summer programs as they were this past summer. So I believe there's going to be opportunities depending on the school, depending on what the needs of that school is, depending on what the needs of the children of each school is. There will be opportunities for summer programs, which could include certain types of summer camps. Is your summer camp a non-for-profit? That may make a difference. Is your summer camp really a summer program that's part of a school? That may make a difference as well. So the simple answer is yes, summer camps will be able to. However, it will depend on the details of number one, the grant, number two, what kind of summer camp you're running. So I believe those are the three questions we have. I guess if there are no other questions, everything was crystal clear. Let me look to my side. I think we're good. And again, thank you all for joining us. We hope to be able to do this every few months. Hopefully after the governor gives his proposed budget, we'll do another quick one that we can tell you what exactly is in there. If we were successful with our, if we were successful with our calls with our advocacy with the treasurer, and I see a few more questions came in. Why do camps charge so much money if they get money? That's an excellent question, and that's why I have the luxury of saying I don't own a camp, and I agree, camps shouldn't charge so much money. You have to speak to the camp people of why they charge so much money. I don't know. The next question is, will the box lunch program continue throughout the summer? The answer is that as of now, I believe that the lunch program goes to the end of the year. I believe it includes the summer, because either which way, the summer program is, let me take a step back. The lunch program we have now is the summer program. There's a waiver that enables all the schools that have the lunch program to operate it as if it's a summer program. So it's not that the lunch program will go through the summer. This is a summer program. The federal government, the Department of Agriculture, created a waiver to sort of make the winter program or the school year program like the summer program, which opens it up for everybody in the city. That's the difference between the regular lunch program, the summer program, without getting into too much of the details of it. So the lunch program is a summer program. It will continue through the summer, continue through the end of this year. And yes, it is a great program. What I will say is that people are listening to this. What I will say is that in some cities that did not previously have a lunch program, whatever the reasons were, they got to have a little bit of a taste of it with this new program. Therefore, because they got a taste of it, now they want to continue. So I believe that in some cities that did not previously have it, there's a good chance they may continue it. I personally reached out to two different cities, one in Central Jersey, one in North Jersey, and said, now that you've got it, and you see what it is, you see the benefits of it, and you see how it's not so hard, maybe it's worthwhile to rethink the idea of having this lunch program, or at least having it in the summertime when kids are in camp, running it through the camps and other opportunities. So I believe this is going to open up, I hope it will open up an opportunity for cities, neighborhoods, communities that did not have it till now to be able to continue to have some sort of lunch program, even if this new waiver ends, the cities will individually try to continue it. And of course, we're here to help and guide them through that process. There was a question that was put on the chat that asked, does it help? I'm going to address this question. Does it help that the president is Democratic and the governor is also? The answer is yes. Of course it does. It definitely helps when the administration in Washington is friendly with the administration of our state. You can't deny that. Whatever our opinion of the president may be or may not be is irrelevant to that question. Yes, it makes a very big difference. Another difference is this $4 billion deficit that we're all worried about. The approach of the current administration seems to be a little bit more generous to local municipalities and state governments. That may help in a very big way for our local budget. Of course, all politics is local. So yes, it definitely does help. I see there's another question over here. Will there be private busing in every town in New Jersey? So the answer to that is that when this bill continues to produce, we'll probably do an entirely separate program just on that busing bill to understand what it does, what it doesn't do, how it can help your community. The simple answer is, if this bill gets passed, it will create a potential of having busing in many communities that today don't have busing because of logistical reasons. Meaning if a community doesn't have busing because of legal reasons, like say, for example, this bill may not help it. However, if there are logistical reasons, which there are many cities and communities throughout New Jersey that don't have good busing, or they have busing, but it's lousy, the stops are horrible, there's one stop for 50 kids, things like that, this bill very well may be able to help, has a lot of potential to be able to help those kinds of scenarios. Okay. I see we have a few more questions over here. What plans, okay, this is an excellent question. What plans for Purim regarding Me'etz's guidance? So I will tell you that obviously, you know, what the Me'etz's discusses is beyond and above my pay grade, but I think I could say that it definitely is a question that is being presented to the Me'etz's about what, you know, Klal Yisrael should do or shouldn't do regarding Purim. And as soon as we know, we will let you know as well. Regarding the next question is obviously Agudas Yisrael is a 501c3, and we do not endorse any political candidate in any election, whether it's gubernatorial or not. I will say that whatever you do and whatever you vote for, make it smart. Vote smartly, not emotionally. Vote in a way that benefits your community, not just benefits your emotions. And take that for whatever it's worth. Another question, I don't know if this is the form of this question. Let me know. Boys moving from all over the country, girls at the same come to Lakewood. Okay, this question about becoming a resident of Lakewood is not so much this topic. You can definitely call our office or send me an email. That's the best, aschnal@aguda.org, or to our associate, YHERZ@aguda.org, and we can talk about the residents' question in Lakewood or other communities. Okay, let's go on to the next one over here. There's a good question. What's the membership campaign? What's the course to become a member? And how can I sign up? Aguda.org. That's not the purpose of this video, is to push membership, but it was asked, so we'll put it out there. The way to become a member of Agudas Yisrael, which we obviously encourage, there will be a big membership campaign in the near future. As of right now, membership is literally $54 a person. There's a family membership, I think, for a little bit more than that, but it really is pennies for what Klal Yisrael receives from the organization. But we will be having a membership campaign shortly. Okay, the next one over here. Quick question over here. That if a student is more than 2 miles, he should be eligible. The answer is yes. If a non-public school student lives further than 2 miles, he is eligible for busing. However, that's only if his counterpart in the public schools have transportation. For example, in Psaik or other cities, I feel bad, we keep on going back to Psaik. In Psaik, the district does not provide transportation because the schools are neighborhood schools, which means everybody lives within 2 miles, mostly. So therefore, there's no busing, no transportation for the public schools. If there's no transportation for public schools, non-public schools are cut out. They only come into the picture if there's busing for public schools, then the non-publics should get. So your question should be, well, if 2 miles would make it, that a public school child should get busing, then a non-public school child should get busing as well. And you're right. And that is something which we've brought up many times. We've brought it up. The Catholic conferences brought it up. It's a great idea. I believe at some point down the line, we'll be able to get that done. We will. Obviously, we have to remember, everything has a price tag. Doing that would create a huge price tag because you'll have lots of non-public school children that were not getting transportation, all of a sudden now eligible. So there's a price tag to it, which obviously is a harder thing to accomplish. Therefore, that is the issue. Now, Clifton may provide busing. The problem is, if you only have 5 or 10 kids living in Clifton, no bus, or even if you have 50 kids on a route I'm talking about, no bus company is going to go to Clifton for just 20, 25 kids on a bus. It has to be worthwhile for them, especially it's inter-district, which gets very complicated as well. So maybe I think we're going to, when this bill starts to move, we'll make a separate webinar just on busing. So you can go through all the questions, but it's very detailed, it's very weedy, it's obviously a very emotional topic to some people, which I totally understand. The days that we don't have busing in Lakewood, we're spoiled here, and we get all frantic, oh no, there's no busing. And yeah, it's a real problem. We should talk about it. We're not by any means saying it's a lost cause. We just have to be realistic and understand the challenges and look at those challenges and figure out how to fix those challenges. One challenge is going to be the price tag, which, okay, that we can get things with the price tag. $6 million went to special education. There's $175 a child going for security, the highest in the country. There is no state in the union that gives $175 for security funding. No one comes close. We have it here in New Jersey. Hats off to Assemblyman Gary Sher and many others that supported in the legislature. Hats off to Governor Murphy that increased those funds in years that there were budget deficits. So we could maybe get money for that, but we have to figure out everything inter-district, Clifton to Psaik. Clifton is not Psaik. They're 2 separate districts. Not only are they 2 separate districts, they're 2 legislative districts. Your assemblyman in Clifton is not Gary Sher, by the way. So there's a lot of things that go into all of this that I think we're going to pledge to do another follow-up webinar just on busing as soon as we have this legislation moving along. Okay. I believe that we are out of Yosef, anything else that we have to get to? I think that's it. I believe that is it. If you live in Psaik and go to a school in Lakewood, the answer is you will not get busing. However, if you live in Deal and you go to school in Lakewood, you will get busing. You're entitled to busing because you live within 20 miles of the school. That's what I'm saying. There's a lot of laws that go into this. You have to live further than 2, but not more than 20. So we have, for example, kids that go to Manalapan or Marlboro, the Shalom Torah Academy. Many of those kids do not get busing, or they get a bus to fix them up, but they don't get funded by the Lakewood Board of Ed or the Manalapan Board of Ed. This is further than 20 miles. We've been here for, I think, almost an hour. We had a lot of questions. It's a great conversation. Are there any hands raised? Everything was in the Q&A. But everything in the Q&A, the chat box. I believe we answered all of it. Thank you very much for joining. Again, if you have any questions, comments, ideas, advice, and even criticism, let us know. aishnal@aguda.org, why hers, pronounced Hertz, at aguda.org. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great night. Have a great week. Have a great Shabbos. And we'll be back for some more. Thank you.